Hey everybody, this is Andrew here with Tower, and today I'm going to be showing you how to install a set of Tower fenders onto your Tower electric bike. So right in front of us we have a brand new Beach Bum V2 by Tower, and if we look over here to my left, you can see we've got our full fender set up here. So I'll just run through all the parts here real quick. So we have the front fender here, which is going to be the smaller one with the little notch at the top. The rear fender is going to be the bigger one with a full slick top. We have our two supports, and then we have our fun bags of parts. To install these, we have the tools all set up right here. You will need a 4mm Allen key, a 3mm Allen key, an 18mm wrench, a 15mm wrench, and a 10mm wrench. And these wrenches are just to take the wheels and other parts on the bike on and off. The Allen keys are actually to assemble and mount the fenders on there. So I'm going to start with the front here. So I'm going to grab my 15mm. We're just going to take the whole front wheel off. So one of the first steps you're going to have to do is you're going to have to sort of build the first fender. So like I said, I'm starting with the front, so I'm going to grab my front fender here. We're going to head over to the back where you see these two holes. So then we're going to open up the bag with these little brackets in here. So grab one pair, grab one silver one, and then one black one. So we've got those. Then we have two separate bags of little bolts here. There's one of them that has about 6 bolts in it that are longer and bigger, and then we've got one that has 4 bolts that are a little bit smaller. For the brackets, we're going to get the 4 smaller bolts. These are how we mount the arm supports to the fender itself. And this part can be a little tricky, just kind of fiddling around with your hands and getting it all lined up. But you're going to take the silver part, and you can see it has little raised edges. You can see that there. So the raised part, that's going to slot right into these holes underneath the fender. And we'll get it all lined up, just like so. You can see that's inside there. Then we're going to take one of these supports. Now these supports are exactly the same. They're the same front and back, so there's no, don't worry about mixing them up or anything because they're exactly the same. So we're just going to lay that right across right in the middle of the holes, and then we're just going to lay this right over it. And you'll see how it's going to work. Going to clamp down, clamp that to the fender itself. And don't worry about the positioning of this support bar right now, because we'll keep this loose and get it all lined up once we actually mount it onto the bike. So there we are. And again, for now, just leave it just like this, where it's nice and loose. So now that our front fender has been assembled, we are going to take our baggie of the 6 bigger bolts, and we're going to swing back over to the bike. How this front fender is going to install is it's going to sit just like this with this front support part here. You can see this part here is going to slot right underneath where that light is. So the next step we have to do is we're going to have to remove this light from the bike. So to do that, we're going to grab our 4mm Allen key and our 10mm wrench, and then we're just going to slot that 4mm into the front bolt, and then the 10 onto the nut on the back, and then we're just going to loosen it. And once it's loose, you can just pull the whole bolt out. Yep, and the whole thing, as you can see, will just slide. And then we're going to take the fender again, and we're going to put it up here. We're going to put this flat section right up against the front of the fork over that hole. Then we're going to push that light bolt back through. And then always remember to push this all the way up. That's usually best. That'll prevent this fender from rubbing against the tire a lot. Once this is threaded through here, you just tighten this down, make sure everything's good to go. You're probably going to have to grab that 4 again. You're just going to have to tuck it in there. And similar to when we installed this front light, you sort of have to hold everything nice and tight while you cinch this down. So there, the front fender, at least on the top, is all mounted up. That is good. So next we're going to keep our 4mm, and then we're going to go back to that second bag of bolts. Again, this is the bag with 6 bolts that are longer and bigger than the other ones. So you're going to grab a pair of those, just a single pair. All the rest are going to go onto the rear. If you check out right here at the bottom of the fork, on either side you can see these little threaded holes. Said they're on either side. Check it out there. That's going to be where these support arms are going to thread into. So you can see it's going to go up like this, and cover the hole like that. Now, I usually recommend to do the left side with the caliper first, because as you can see, this bolt and this support arm are gonna come really close, and if this side's already tightened on, you're gonna be fighting this a lot. So it's easier, well, you can have a lot of movement here to get this threaded on, because the other side, there's nothing really in the way, so it'll mount on much easier. So just get the hole lined up and start threading that bolt in. Start it a little bit tighter on there. Not all the way tight, but a little bit tighter so it doesn't pop off on us. Then we're going to head over to the right side. We're going to get that, remember, get it all lined up with that little hole, and then take your longer bolt, probably have some blue Loctite on there, and then just thread that bad boy in. And then be sure to remember to tighten these back ones as well down here with that little bracket. All right, so there the front fender is now installed. So instead of installing the front wheel now, I'm actually going to install the rear fender, and then at the very end, I'm going to put both the wheels on together. So for removing the rear wheel, first thing we're going to do is we're going to head down to the motor plug. Big guy here, and just give that a little tug and unplug it. That is going to be the most important step, because you do not want to loosen this wheel and have it come off and then realize it is still wired to the bike. Then you're going to want to take off this little frame clip. Usually it's helpful to get a little flathead or something in there to just get it popped off. Then the next part is we're going to remove these little rubber caps off of our wheel, just so we can access that axle nut. And just slide that one down. And then on the left side, you're just going to take the whole piece off and set it to the side. All right. Now that those are off, we can now take off this rear wheel. And remember, when you're taking this rear wheel off, be sure to remember the spacing and the stack order for those washers and spacers. Because when you put this wheel back on, you're obviously going to want to have everything lined up exactly the same way. So you want to make sure your bike's running smooth. So again, just like the front, we're going to set that wheel to the side because we don't really need it at the moment. We're going to head back here, and just like the front fender, we're going to grab the rear fender, and we're going to get it mounted onto those two holes. There we go. So got those tightened on, got that mounted up. Now, the rear is a little bit more interesting than the front in that we have a few more mounts on the frame itself with the bigger bolts here. So we're going to swing over to the rear, and I will show you all of the spots where those bigger bolts are going to mount up. So the first spot that we're going to mount one of these longer bolts is going to be, if you look straight through where the wheel would be, you see this little knob here at the bottom of the frame near where the battery and the bottom bracket are. That's going to be where we're going to thread the first part. The second part is going to be this little bridge here. This part is threaded. You're going to thread it in there. And then the final two support arms will thread into these top holes here. You have two. One's for a rack. One is for a fender set. Really, it's not particular which one you use. I usually like to use the top just because it spaces the fender off from the wheel a little bit better. So without further ado, I'm going to get mounting those brackets on here. And if you look on the fender itself, you can see we have a hole here on the top and then a hole here on the bottom. This bottom one is going to be the threaded hole near the bottom bracket of the battery. This top one is going to be the one near the seat. All right, so we got that upper bolt threaded in, and we're not going to thread it in all the way because we may want to adjust it a little bit up and down, but we want to get it tightened on there so now it's held in place. We're going to go ahead and head down to the bottom one right down here. So just slide the fender over till that hole's exposed. Thread it in a little more. Again, we're not going to thread this in all the way because we still want to be able to make some minor adjustments here and there. So now that the frame spots are mounted on, now we're going to do these support arms onto the bike itself. So actually the way it's lining up, I'm going to hit these bottom ones here and leave these upper ones for a rack or something like that. So I'm going to take the last two remaining larger bolts that I have. Again, the bigger ones that have a little bit of blue Loctite on them. Those are going to be the frame mount bolts. And then same as the front, we're just going to get these lined up and threaded into the frame itself. And just like the rest of them, don't thread them in all the way, just get them about halfway in, just so we can make adjustments if we need. Got that threaded on, and let's swing over to the right side. And I also like to tuck it underneath the cable here. You can see the cable go on either side. Tuck it on the outside, just in case we need to work on it or anything like that. It's all on the outside and easy to do, and we don't have to, undo fenders or anything to work on a derailleur. That's just to tighten them all down all the way. So one of the big ones is these two bolts here on the frames on the inside. Once that wheel's on, you will not be able to adjust them. So we want to get those tightened down in a good place right here. All right, so I got those two dialed on. Now we are going to get the wheels back onto this bike. So we're gonna hit this front first. And be sure to get that washer onto the outside. And just tighten these bad boys down. And then once we have that front wheel, or any of the wheels installed really, what we want to do is give it a good spin, make sure we're not rubbing anywhere on the fender. All right, let's head over to the rear, which as always is a little bit more complicated to get mounted on, just due to the motor and the sheer size of the wheel. So get this tucked in here. A little better angle there, there you go. And I always set it up so we just tuck it right on that first chain ring. So now I got it in, then we're gonna have to rotate that axle to get it to slot in. And it's really handy if you take a 10 millimeter, you can actually slot that onto the axle and then just rotate it around. And then as you can see, once it kind of gets into place, this whole axle literally will slot right down into its perfect spot. Just like so. And remember, these little elbow washers are gonna be on the inside facing down. They're facing up to me right now, but that's because my bike is currently upside down. So then we're just going to slide those washers and nuts back onto the wheel. For a more in-depth look at how to remove this rear wheel, be sure to check out our rear wheel removal video. So now that those nuts are on there, we're going to get these all tightened down. Slide those little rubber caps back on. Then we're going to want to get this plugged in. Remember, arrow to arrow, and just click those guys together. You are all set. And remember, that frame clip we set to the side earlier, we're going to get that right here. Click on one side, click it down. And again, just like the front, we want to give this a spin, make sure it's not rubbing anywhere on the fender. So we are good, silent on the fender. We'll rotate this back down and take our final look. All right. And there we have it, a fresh, brand new set of fenders installed on the Tower Beach Bum bike. These fenders do come in this copper color as well as a nice black to keep the whole black on black vibe. Thanks for joining us. Hope you have a great day.